So, after having seen multiple theories on A Song of Ice and Fire over the years from many great theorists, I have come to the realization that there is clearly a greater story that George is trying to tell us here, and that we are yet to finally put all the pieces together properly. And so this is what my grand unifying theory here attains to. And that is that in the ancient legends of this world, we are actually getting told the true history of what happened in the distant past, which is also not as long ago as events appear to be portrayed by the Maesters, the Faith and the Andals, who do indeed appear to be lying and corrupting history to cover up what actually happened. And so we find that these events are also repeating themselves in the present of the story, and so this would give us some clues as to what George is planning for Winds of Winter and Dream of Spring by looking at the ancient histories. Now, the central backbone of this theory is that the Gemstone emperors of the Great Empire of the Dawn are in actual fact representations of the various races of ancient peoples who migrated out of the Far East and eventually come to settle in Westeros. So the first part of this myth would tell us about the Maiden, made of light, and the Lion of Night, who join together to form the God on Earth. Now, the story of A Song of Ice and Fire at its core, I believe, is a tale of the race of man fighting off against the race of the children of the forest, as this is a motif that George employs strongly in his writings, most notably in the Thousand World series, as it has come to be known, as man is always put at odds against other beings. So all of the evidence that we appear to have seems to point to the fact that the Lion of the Night represents the children of the forest. They are nocturnal hunter peoples, and so are notably hunting at night, and are described as having almost cat-like eyes. And as we will see later, the moon seems to have an intricate link to the Weirwoods used by the children of the forest. Therefore, we have a link to both lions and night. The Maiden made of light seems to evoke an angelic figure and appears to be a proto-form of the Relor religion that we see. Those who oppose the moon in many real-world mythologies are most commonly associated with the sun and the stars, which we will see in the cultures of A Song of Ice and Fire are important. As David Lightbringer notes in his mythical astronomy, these concepts are very important in this world as they are in our own world. One of the most notable real-world associations with these celestial bodies is that the sun and stars are often associated with fire, being that they are in actual fact cosmic bonfires of a sort, while the moon is most often associated with water due to its effects on the tide, and also potentially ice due to its pale appearance, which would give us our link between the children of the forest and the others being creatures of ice. The God on Earth shows us that at some point these two cultures presumably merged together, and it's said that he is carried around in a palanquin carved from a pearl and carried by 100 queens who are also his wives. Now we learn from the assorted myths in A Song of Ice and Fire that many of these early beings are said to live for hundreds of years and also have many wives, which appears to be a mythical way of saying that they were wed to the weirwood net. The queens or wives are the weirwoods holding him up, as we see the palanquin heavily resembles a pearl, and in real-world mythology, pearls are dewdrops that fell from the moon. So this would give us one of our many representations of the Weirwoods appearing to either cradle or attempt to pull down the moon, and so strengthens the Children of the Forest, Moon, Weirwood, Lion of the Night connections. Now the God on Earth is said upon his death to ascend to the stars to join his forebears. Now this implies to us that his forebears came from the stars. This makes the theory that this is a post-interregnum world in the Thousand Worlds series seems incredibly likely as a starting point of humanity for this planet. They came from space, as we have no indication that they evolved anywhere on this planet naturally. And it's possible that the Maiden made of light is a reference to the fact that these could in fact be the steel angels mentioned in George's other works, as we see that in this world, there's a deity named Bacalon, the Pale Child, who exists as an obscure religious figure in Asshai, one of the oldest locations on this planet. And if you think about it, a Pale Child could be considered, in the right light, a child of light, possibly a child of the Maiden made of light. So the Pale Child, Bacalon, is worshipped by the Steel Angels, who are a religious, fanatical group of humans that believe in superiority of the human race over aliens and that the human race must survive at all costs. Their ancient enemy is known as the Harangans, who are notably very similar in concept to the Children of the Forest, and so I believe that they are in actual fact the same race. They practice ritualistic cannibalisms, they send visions to confuse their enemies, they utilise slave races, notably one bat-like and one giant, similar to the bones that we see in the Children of the Forest caves, and there are even descriptions of Harangans that note that they have red eyes like we see of the special genes in A Song of Ice and Fire, and there is even one mention of them in Night Flyers, which refers to them as children, which may have been part of George's inspiration for the concept upon the creation of A Song of Ice and Fire. And so it is long held that this world we are seeing is in actual fact their homeworld. As we know, in the war, they were wiped out apart from their homeworld, which logically the humans would then proceed to colonise as a safeguard. And it is even noted in the Stone City that the Harangans are most likely still out there and plotting their revenge, much like we see the Children of the Forest doing in A Song of Ice and Fire. Now, the god on earth being the child of the Maiden and the Lion seems to imply that a union of some kind occurred, which implies a peace may have been brokered between the two races upon the humans landing. The god on earth appears in this point to be the actual first incarnation of the three-eyed raven. So I believe that this is in actual fact the true origin of the story of the pact, as these very much are the first men. They are the first men to arrive on this planet. And so this may also tie in with the ending that we see to Game of Thrones, which may well be partially true to how the story ends in the book due to George's influence on the TV show. Bran will become the three-eyed raven, and likely the rule of the land would return to the ways of the three-eyed raven with an elected ruler. As we do know, certain aspects of Game of Thrones are indeed going to happen in the books, such as the events in the cave regarding Hodor. Now, the god on earth is succeeded by our first Gemstone Emperor, the Pearl Emperor, and I believe the gemstones we see for each emperor correlate to their dominant eye colour as a race, and so the Pearl Emperor is represented by the milky white eyes we see when beings such as Bran use the special powers in Game of Thrones. We see that the peace between man and the Children of Forest appears to break down at this point, and we see that the Pearl Emperor is noted to be responsible for building the 5 forts to defend against the demons of the Lion of Night. And so we get another association with the Children of the Forest being referred to as demons, which we can add to our list as we will see this recurs throughout the stories. And so looking at the world map, it makes sense that these demons are the Children of the Forest, as the lands beyond the 5 forts are all linked in some way to the mythos of the children. The Cannibal Sands notably ties us back to the Harangans, who are notably to be cannibals. Bone Town and the Dry Deep show us a great ancient bone-filled pit, which I believe shows us the bones of the many sacrifices to their dark gods, the Weirwoods. And it appears that these Weirwoods are indeed a sinister, potentially global threat. These trees are notably gnarly and twisted things, and as we see in real life, most plants with white or red colouring are in actual fact parasitic, because because they lack chlorophyll in order to convert sunlight, and so they require other life forms to sustain them, which appears to be the case with the Weirwoods, as they show signs of being trees which appear to be infected by a fungus. And it is worth noting in real life that there is in fact a species of honey fungus that exists in the United States, which has two large sites where the fungus grows in massive underground networks and has lived for thousands of years, both of which have been dubbed the name humongous fungus. And one of these two is specifically considered to be the largest organic life form by mass. Now, we know weirwoods dig very deep with their roots, and so it's possible that they are actually all linked in a global net as a fungus does in the real world. And the weirwoods themselves are just tiny projections of this massive organism. And interestingly enough, it does seem as if there is a fungal component here, as we see when Bloodraven is found in the cave, he appears to have mushrooms growing out of him where the weirwoods are growing from him. Now, another curious trait of the weirwoods is the fact that they do not appear to rot, but instead turn to stone, which is an interesting link, as we find that funguses in the real world do in fact act in this same way. They do not appear to rot, but instead they revert to stone-like spores and remain dormant. And in the case of the honey fungus, the spores have been noted to survive in the wood of infected trees, even if you take the tree and shove it through a wood chipper. The shards of the tree still bear the fungus infection and can re-sprout again in the future. So severed bits of weirwood act very much in the same way. The fungus that composes them is in actual fact still alive. We also notably see that weirwoods seep a thick sap, which again commonly is a trait of fungus infected trees, and is also how the honey fungus came to get its name. And lastly, we find that honey fungus has the ability to glow in the dark, a trait shared with what appears to be the ropey tendrils of the weirwood, which we see around the area of Asshai in the form of ghost grass, pale white stalks which glow with the souls of the damned. They glow like a fungus, and they contain souls, which we know the weirwoods do, so it seems plausible then that the weirwoods definitely are fungal infected trees. Now, beyond the Five Forts, we also see the land of the Shrikes, which is notable as a Shrike is an entity in the Hyperion sci-fi books, which has a link to time and impales people on spikes, similar to the real-life bird of the same name, which impales its prey on the spikes of trees. So we have a creature which is linked to time travel, birds, and spikes. And the city of Kadath is situated in this land, which evokes the Lovecraftian city of Kadath, being referred to by its inhabitants as the oldest city in A Song of Ice and Fire's world, where dark rituals occur. In Lovecraftian lore, it is home to the gods of dreams and exists in the dreamlands, which is intriguing, as in combining all of these elements, we find that in Bran's dream during his coma at the start of the series, he is led by the three-eyed crow, a bird, which shows him dreamers impaled on spikes. So at this early point in the story, we are already getting clues of the deeper lore behind the scenes. So Kadath is likely a city of humans, the first city of humans, and they utilised the power of dreaming from the children of the forest. So why exactly then does the Pearl Emperor build the Five Forts to separate it from the rest of mankind's realm? And I believe that the point of this is shown in Bran's story in A Game of Thrones, in the fact that a matter of succession. He may be the god on Earth's son, but does not inherit the role of the three-eyed raven. As George is showing us, much like in the TV series, the true point of the story is an end to hereditary rule as a system, and it being replaced by diplomatic voting, and we will see that the one who appears to have been chosen instead of him is our next Gemstone Emperor, the Jade Emperor, who is also none other than Garth Greenhand. Now, the ancient tales of Westeros indicate that this age was called the Dawn Age, and it's curious as the Dawn Age clearly has parallels to the Great Empire of the Dawn. The Maesters would go on to tell us that the Dawn Age is then followed by the Long Night and then the Age of Heroes, but this appears to be a lie, as our central heroic figure in the Long Night story is the last hero. So why does the last hero predate the Age of Heroes? He doesn't. The Maesters are lying about the histories, and the Age of Heroes actually occurs within the Dawn Age. And we see that it is mentioned by many of the ancient houses that they date their origins to the Golden Age of the First Men, which is said to combine the Dawn Age and the Age of Heroes, which makes sense when you look at the progression of the naming here. The Dawn Age, the Golden Empire of the Dawn, and the Golden Age of the First Men. It's all happening in the same age. Now, we see that Garth is often considered to be a man who has green hands, green hair, and sometimes just green skin overall, which can lead us to the assumption then that the man most likely also has green eyes, making him our Jade Emperor. And it's interesting as the man is described as being polygamous and taking thralls, which is a connection that we see shared with the culture of the First Men and also of the Valyrians. And so these must come from a common root ancestor, which obviously over time, as the civilizations diverged, branched off slightly. And so it seems that the common root of this cultural practice appears to be involving marrying the Weirwoods, which is seen as polygamy. And it is very easy to consider the fact that Garth indeed has connections to the children of the forest, as we see that there are stories which relate to him having sacrifices for his harvest, and also that he is noted to have planted weirwoods in Highgarden. Curiously, he is also noted to have planted the oaken seat in Highgarden, which makes me think that it's possible that these are both the same thing. The oaken seat is in actual fact the weirwood throne, as it seems interesting that weirwoods are a fungus and so they infect a tree. Now, certain species only infect certain species of tree. And as oak trees are seen in many cultures as the embodiment of summer in the form of the Oak King who does war with the Holly King of winter, it only seems to make sense then that these weirwoods, these trees of death and winter, are the opposite of their true host tree, the oak tree of summer. Now, we also get tales which mention to us that Garth is noted to have treated with the children of the forest and also giants, who in one story throw rocks at him, and this may be explained in the World Book as the giants are actually referred to as the ancient enemy of the children of the forest before the humans even arrive. And they in fact did appear to arrive here before Garth, despite the fact that they themselves leave the Far East after him, as the giants are representative of our next culture to leave the Far East, led by the Tourmaline Emperor. Tourmaline itself being an inky black stone, and this is reflected in the fact that this race have very dark eyes. And this inky black oily colour also foretells the other thing that we know this race will come to be connected to, the oily black stone structures. So having come from the Far East, it appears that these giants built the City of Asshai and also appear to have had their origins on Leng. Leng is notably another Lovecraftian reference here, and it is a location which is also found in the Dreamlands. So I believe this is the original site of the giants, and we see here that there are giant ruins that extend underground which are not notably made of oily black stone, and so these are the ruins of the proto-giant civilization before they set out. And we also find that these ruins are noted to have labyrinths in them, which drive people mad, and by the current era of A Song of Ice and Fire, these are long abandoned as the natives have moved away. So this will be important going forward for this race. So now we see that the giants are known for the oily black stone and also underground locations and mazes. So what happened on Leng seems to be that the giants abandoned the island as it was home to the children of the forest, as seen by the fact that the jungle has reclaimed the ruins. And we also find that there are notes of mysterious gods below the island that inform the rulers to sacrifice to them. So it appears the giants moved out, and it appears that by digging down and creating the labyrinths, they are in fact creating a way to harness the darkness in order to open their third eye to become psychically powered, which may tie them to another of the Far East cultures, the cities of the winged men. They fly using the sight, like how Bran does in his dreams, under the direction of the crow, and they live near Carcosa, another Lovecraftian city which is said to be located in the Dreamlands. So these cities that the ancient giants inhabit are attempting to utilise the power of dreams to steal the power of the children of the forest. And the smoking gun here seems to be the fact that Leng is noted as an island to be avoided by most seafarers, as it is noted that the island is the haunt of demons. And as we have seen so far, demons commonly is used as a means of referring to the children of the forest. Now, despite the fact that the giants left Leng, it does appear that some of their kind may have remained behind and even interbred with the children of the forest, as the native Lengi are noted as the tallest people in the world, but also have traits associated with the children, such as skin which resembles wood and also golden eyes. So it appears that after leaving Leng, the giants themselves constructed the great city of Asshai, and this appears to be built here primarily to oppose what appears to be a stronghold of the children of the forest on the peninsula, Stigai, the corpse city, so called likely because it is home to the many bodies absorbed by the Weirwood. Like we see of Bloodraven in the cave, he is described as corpse-like. Stigai likewise also evokes the name of the river Styx of Greek mythology, which runs through the underworld, which is also noted to be home of the children of the forest. So it appears that the giants are the ones who make the oily black stone, but what exactly is it? It seems weird that a stone would be considered oily, so I believe that it is not actually a stone, but it is in fact oily black wood, because as we know, the Weirwoods turn to stone over time, and so the oily black stone is in fact oily black wood, possibly even a variant of Weirwood. And as we see in the area surrounding Asshai, to build a city this massive, you would need a lot of oily black wood. What do we notice from the area around Asshai? The peninsula has no trees, because the giants cut them all down to build their city, leaving behind only the grasping tentacles of the Weirwood reaching out of the ground in the form of ghost grass. And so in part 2, we will look further at the migrations of the giant race and their creations, these oily black trees, and try to discern what their origins are.